We're going to do another verse from the Gita, chapter 6, verse 32. This was brought once again from Ravidas. Thank you, brother. This video is for you, for no one else. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through the verse. I'm going to give my translation. My translation has changed since you saw it last, Ravidas. And then I'm going to go through about 18 other translations, some of the major translations. But let's first go through some of the verses leading up to this. We have verse 29. Sarvabhutastam atmanam sarvabhutani chatmani ikshate yoga yuktatma sarvatra samadarshana. With oneself yoked in yoga, yoga yukta atma, it's one's soul, oneself, one's atma yoked in yoga. One sees oneself abiding in all beings. Sarva bhuta, all beings. Sta, abiding. Atmana ikshate. Ikshate is sees. Right? One sees oneself abiding in all beings. This is important because this is very related to the verse we're doing today. The verse that we're doing does not have ikshate, the verb ikshate. It has paśhyati, but it basically means the same thing. Sees, right? Sees in all beings. Now what we have today is sarvatra, which means everywhere. It doesn't mean all beings, but this verse also has sarvatra. So with oneself yoked in yoga, one sees oneself abiding in all beings, and all beings in oneself. Sarvabhutani cha atmani. Okay, and one sees the same everywhere. Sarvatra samadarshana. Right? Everywhere, sees with equal vision everywhere. Now, with oneself, I actually could possibly change this just a little bit, because I don't think you need the word see again. You can take that out. But the word sama means same, right? It's the same word as the word in English. It's where we get the English word. Same is from the Sanskrit sama, or might have an earlier language in the Indo-European language family. But sama. So sees the same everywhere. And I translate sama almost always as same. Sometimes I translate it as equal. But I like to translate as same because it is basically the same as sama, right? All right, so verse 30. Yo mam paśhyati sarvatra sarvam cha mayi paśhyati. Tasyaham na pranashyami sacha me na pranashyati. One who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I am not separated from that one, nor are they separated from me. So yamam paśhyati sarvatra, one who sees me everywhere. Now it has the word paśhyati, the verb paśhyati, sees, right? And sees everything in me. Sarvacha mayi paśhyati, same verb, paśhyati. I am not separated from that one. Tasya aham na pranashyami. Now pranashyami, I am not lost, I am not separated, nor are they separated from me. Okay? So the idea here, what is the meaning, of these verses? It's about seeing, right? It's about how you see the world, right? And if you see with this equal vision, samadarshana, then you remain connected to that source, right? You remain, in this case, you remain connected to Krishna. Because you are seeing as Krishna sees. But let's go on, because we may have to nuance that a little bit further. 31. Sarvabhutas titam yomam bhajat yekatvam ashitaha sarvata vartamano pi sa yogi mayi vartate. The one who, being established in oneness, astita ekatvam, worships me, mam bhajati, who dwells in all beings, sarvabhutastita, we've seen that already, that yogi abides in me, sa yogi mayi vartate, whatever their manner of living / acting may be, sarvatra vartamana api. So they're establishing the oneness. Now this does not have the seeing here, right? This leaves out seeing. But being established in oneness, who dwells in all beings, worships me who dwells in all beings, that yogi abides in me, whatever their manner of living, acting may be. Now that last phrase, probably we could look at what other people say, because that's a little bit hard to translate what that means. Okay, so this is the one verse in all 4 of the verses that I'm going to talk about, which does not have anything about seeing. But it's basically the same idea. Right? Okay, so 32, here's our verse for today. ātma-aupamyena sarvatra samam paśhyati yo Arjuna sukham va yadi duḥkhaṁ sa yogi paramo mataḥ. One who, seeing the image of one's own self, ātma-aupamyena paśhyati. So we have paśhyati again, right? We had one instance of ikshate, but most of the verbs have been paśhyati, which means sees, right? Seeing the image of one's own self, ātma-aupamyena, sees the same everywhere, sarvatra sama Arjuna. Wait, I changed this, sorry. Let me look at what I have now. So I changed it to Arjuna, one who sees the image of one's own self, the same everywhere. So I don't, because what I just read, I was repeating the verb again, but I don't think you need to repeat the verb again. So now I have Arjuna, one who sees the image of one's own self, the same everywhere. So sarvatra means everywhere. Sama, same. Be it pleasure or pain. So yadi va means like whether it be it. A lot of people have whether it be, right? I just kept it simple. Be it pleasure or be it pain is regarded as the supreme yogi. Sa yogi parama mataḥ. Parama is like supreme or highest. Mataḥ is regarded or thought of, considered. So, Arjuna, one who sees the image of one's own self, the same everywhere, be it pleasure or pain / suffering, is regarded as a supreme yogi. Now, the problem with my translation, which I might want to change, is it's hard to understand it, right? It's hard to understand what it means. Now, if you change it to Arjuna, one who sees the image of one's own self, the same so now I would change it to whether pleasant or painful. That's what I would do to make it more understandable. Whether pleasant or painful is regarded as a supreme. Okay, whether you like it or whether you don't like it, whether it's pleasing or displeasing, the yogi remains constant in their vision. They see the same. Right? It does not affect them. They remain equanimous. They remain undisturbed. Their mind is undisturbed. And the image of one's own self, you could say, it's like the yogi looking in a pond seeing the reflection in the pond, right? They see their own reflection because the mind is not, the water is not made to have any kind of waves, any kind of anything that would disturb the image, right? So the yogi sees the yogi that sees him or herself in everything, everywhere, in everyone, whether in pleasure or pain, whether pleasant or painful. See, the problem with saying pleasant or painful is that that's not what it says. It's not. If it were to say that, then we could change it to that more easily. But it doesn't. It says whether in pleasure or pain. Now, it could mean whether the yogi is in pleasure or pain. It doesn't even say in, right? It doesn't have that meaning of in, whether pleasurable or painful. Let's say pleasurable or painful. It's hard to translate this, right? This is a very difficult one. So let's see what other people say. That's my right. Arjuna, one who sees the image of one's own self the same everywhere, whether pleasurable or painful, is regarded as a supreme yogi. All right. What does Winthrop Sargent have? He has he who sees the equality in everything. So he uses equality versus same, right? In everything, in the image of his own self, Arjuna, whether in pleasure or in pain, is thought to be a supreme yogin. So he has in, right? He uses in there, which, let's see, sukham, pleasure, happiness, duḥkhaṁ, pain, misery. So in his word by word translation, he just says whether pleasure or pain, right? Pleasure, whether or pain. But in his final translation, he has whether in pleasure or pain. So he adds that, right? So he adds that to make it understandable. Otherwise, it's not understandable. And mine was not understandable either. Now, it's a question whether the yogi is in pleasure or pain himself, or he sees something outside of himself which is, pleasant or painful. It's a very slight difference, but it might be meaningful. Does it mean, for instance, that if a yogi is in a difficult situation or in a painful situation, the yogi remains constant in his resolve and his yokedness, right? In his unity, in his equanimity? Or is it saying that whatever the yogi sees outside of himself, he sees it as the same, right? It's difficult to understand this. So Sargent has he who sees the equality in everything in the image of his own self. Arjuna, whether in pleasure or in pain, is thought to be a supreme yogin. So he has yogin. He uses the a masculine nominative singular yogin. See if anyone else uses yogin. He might be the only one. So Shivananda has he who through the likeness of the self, O Arjuna, sees equality everywhere, be it pleasure or pain. So I was following Shivananda originally. Be it pleasure or pain, he is regarded as the highest yogi. It's still difficult to understand, right? He who through it's a little clunky. He who through the likeness of the self, O Arjuna, sees equality everywhere, be it pleasure or pain, he is regarded as the highest yogi! Exclamation point. So he is highest versus supreme. Nikalananda, let's read his. Him I hold to be the supreme yogi, so he uses supreme for parama, O Arjuna, who looks on the pain and pleasure of all beings as he looks on them in himself. So he has looks on as for paśhyati. He uses it twice. So he looks on the pain and pleasure of all beings. It says sarvatra, though. It doesn't say all beings, right? So that's not literally, word for word. Because if it, would have said sarvabhuta, if it meant all, if it was saying all beings, it would have said sarvabhuta. Now, keep in mind that each verse, each shloka has to fit, right? So it could be that the author of the Gita maybe wanted to say a certain way, but for space considerations could not say it a certain way, right? Maybe he could only say sarvatra in this verse, although what he wanted to say was sarvabhuta. I hope you understand what I'm getting at here, is that, maybe sometimes the difficulty in translating the verse is because the author could only write it, a certain way, and it made it hard to translate. Because it lost, because he was concerned about the space, then he sacrificed something there. So, Nikalananda, him I hold to be the supreme yogi, or Arjuna, who looks on the pain and pleasure of all. Now, does it say I hold? No, it does not say I hold, right? It does not say that Krishna holds, which is also another interesting thing, is that sometimes Krishna says I regard, and sometimes he just says is regarded as. In this case, it's regarded as, right? Is thought of as. And the question I have, an ongoing question, is why does Krishna not say I think of as the highest, right? Because it's what he thinks, not what other people think, right? If you think if Krishna really is the supreme, then it really should be what Krishna thinks. But again, I want to bring in that idea of space considerations, right? The author might have only had so much space, so he wanted to say it a certain way, but wasn't able to because of space considerations, and so had to sacrifice something. Okay. In English translation, there's no space consideration because it can be as short or as long as you want, right? Right. Radhakrishnan, he, O Arjuna, who sees with equality everything, so he has equality. Now, Nikalananda does not have either equal or same. Shivananda has equality. He, O Arjuna, who sees with equality everything, that's sarvatra, right? In the image of his own self, whether in pleasure or in pain. So he has, like Sargent, he has in pleasure or in pain, is considered a perfect yogi. So he uses the word perfect for parama. Usually gets translated as supreme or highest, but it could be perfect as well. But I think that perfect also has a connotation maybe which supreme and highest do not have, which means perfect gives you the sense that there's nothing higher, right? That being is absolutely, totally, all the way there, right? So he, O Arjuna, who sees with equality everything in the image of his own self, whether in pleasure or in pain, he is considered a perfect yogi. So whether in pleasure or pain seems to suggest that whether the yogi is experiencing pleasure or whether the yogi is experiencing pain, he sees everything with that equal vision, right? Samadarshana, he sees everything really the same. Nothing takes him away from that equipoise, that mental equilibrium. Iswaran, who has a really great translation and is very takes a lot of poetic license. So let's see what he says. When a person responds to the joys and sorrows of others as if they were his own, he has attained the highest state of spiritual union. Let's not say, well, yoga, let's see, highest state of spiritual union. Yeah, he's definitely taking license, right? When a person responds to the joys and sorrows of others as if they were his own, that's definitely taking license with the verse, right? I mean, that might be the meaning of it. That might be, he might have hit upon the deeper essence of the verse, and that's why you can't necessarily go by the literal translation all the time, because you have to take this in its broader context. You have to take it in terms of other things that Krishna said. That's why I read some of the verses previous before I started this. That's, when a person responds to the joys and sorrows of others as if they were his own. It's a beautiful sentiment too, and it's also what I think we all aspire to is that we maybe that we don't feel in that moment, we don't meet someone in their joy or meet someone in their suffering, because maybe we cannot feel that. But we can see their joy and their suffering as the same as ours, in a different form, and we see our sameness with them, our equality with them. Now, Iswaran is not necessarily saying that you feel the joy or you feel the sorrow. He says you respond to the joys and sorrows of others as if they were your own. That's not the same as feeling it, right? Now, if I were to feel the sorrow of everyone all the time, for example, and some people do, they're very sensitive, I might go crazy, right? I don't know if it means feeling the sorrow, but sees the sorrow as one's own. That in other words, maybe we can look at it as, I don't judge you for what you're feeling or what's happening to you at all. What's happening to you, I have gone through as well. And I may not in this very moment, but I am the same, right? We're in the same boat here. I have no place for judgment of any kind, and I don't judge you for anything you've done to bring about that sorrow. I don't say, well, that's just your karma and you deserved it, but rather I in some regard I'm with you on that, right? I'm with you in your joy, I'm with you in your suffering. It's a beautiful idea, but it doesn't seem to be what the verse is saying, if you just go by the words. Juan Mascaro, and he is the greatest yogi. He is the greatest, right? He whose vision is ever one, when the pleasure and pain of others is his own pleasure and pain. Now, this is same as Iswaran, basically, right? Maybe Iswaran used Mascaro because Mascaro had a very famous translation. This is one of the best translations. I think it was published by Penguin. So Iswaran might have been using Mascaro, and that's something we'd have to look into, right? But he basically has the same idea. Tilak had an older translation. Oh, Arjuna, exclamation point. That, in parentheses, karma yogin, who has begun to look everywhere with a self-identifying vision, but he has self-identifying in parentheses, according to which others are the same as himself, such a man is considered parama, that is, most superior, parentheses. He has a lot of parentheses here. I don't know if the parentheses, maybe they detract from the, I don't tend to use parentheses unless they're absolutely necessary. but that's my style, right? I wouldn't put self-identifying in parentheses though, right? Because self-identifying is right there in the, in the verse itself. He, like Jeffrey Armstrong, which we're going to see, he doesn't translate parama for some reason. He keeps the Sanskrit there. Now, why he does that is unclear, because parama, he could have easily have used, he could have used atma, right? He could have put atma here, but he didn't. And atma is much more used than parama, although parama is used a lot in the Gita. Why he does that is a little bit unclear, and then he puts in parentheses that is most superior. So, I don't think that's the best translation personally, but Tilak had one of the better ones. Srila Prabhupada, he is a perfect yogi, so he uses perfect, who by comparison to his own self, I don't know if that's the best word, sees the true equality of all beings in both their happiness and their distress, O Arjuna. It doesn't say all beings, right? It says sarvatra. Both their happiness. He's adding quite a bit here, right? Again, taking license. Comparison, I don't think comparison is a great word for this, No one else has comparison. Let's see what Jeffrey Armstrong has. O Arjuna, one who continually sees the Atma, so he does not translate Atma, in all living entities as in essence the same as his own Atma. So in essence the same, right? He adds that. And he also puts all living entities, he doesn't say everywhere. Even while experiencing dukkha, which he translates in, now he doesn't have parentheses, he has quotations, material miseries and pains, or sukha, again, quotations, the joys and pleasures of matter, is said to have attained the peak of yogic perfection. It doesn't say the peak, but you could understand it that way. But it's it's considered the highest or the supreme yogi. He takes some license here. O Arjuna, one who continually sees the Atma and all living entities as in essence the same as his own Atma, even while experiencing dukkha or sukha. So the yogi himself is either experiencing dukkha or sukha, right? Pleasure or pain. So in other words, whatever's happening outside of your, whatever you see as a yogi, your mind does not get disturbed, right? You go about your business and nothing in this world can disturb your mind, right? That seems to be the idea. And even if you experience suffering, even if you experience joy, you don't lose yourself. You don't lose that, you don't use that inner, I like the word equipoise or equilibrium or equanimity. So for sama, he has same. All right, paramaḥ Devi, or Arjuna, one who sees everything / everyone. So she's the first person to do that, actually. It says sarvatra means everything, but she says everyone. As non-different from oneself, both in joy and in sorrow. Non-different for sama. I wouldn't put that, right, because it says sama, but it's okay. And he has, she has whether both in joy and in sorrow, right? Whether in joy or in sorrow. Remember that Sargent did that, and I believe maybe Shivananda did that. Is in my opinion the greatest yogi. It does not say in my opinion. It says is regarded as the highest yogi or the greatest yogi. So it's not the greatest, I don't think, translation. It's not bad. None of these are really bad. All these are getting close to it. Bhagavad Gita-org, one who perceives in comparison. Oh, this does have comparison. So maybe it was using Prabhupada, one who perceives in comparison with the self all living entities equally in happiness and distress. Such a one perfected in the science of uniting the individual consciousness with the ultimate consciousness is considered the highest. So it adds a few things here. In happiness and distress, then it's hard to understand what it means, right? So I don't think this is the best, because then it makes it hard to understand what the verse is actually saying. And I don't think comparison is a good, comparison with oneself. It's not about comparing oneself. That's a misleading word. Mahadev Desai, the Gita according to Gandhi. He who, by likening himself with others. Now this is similar to comparing, right? But this is a little different. Likening oneself to others, meaning that I am like you, right? I am no different than you, or I am the same as you. Senses pleasure and pain equally for all as for himself, is deemed to be the highest yogi, O Arjuna. Senses for paśhyati, maybe not the best. But you can, just like Ikshwaran use responds. But it does clarify what it means, right? The sukha duḥkha, what that means. So it's just a little better, right? Just a little better. Jayadaya Goyanka, Arjuna, he looks on all as one, on the analogy of his own self. This is the first time someone used analogy, right? And looks upon the joy and sorrow of all with a similar eye. I'm just going to change that word. Of all with a similar eye. Such a yogi is deemed the highest of all. Mahadev Desai and Goyanka both have deemed, right? So, for mataḥ. So Arjuna, he looks on all as one, as on the analogy of his own self, and looks upon the joy and sorrow of all with a similar eye. It doesn't have similar eye, right? That's an addition. But he sees everything as the same. Again, I don't think it's the best translation. It's a little bit free. Some of these translations are a little bit freer. And I think they're maybe a little bit too wordy, and a little bit too, because they're too wordy, they're a little harder to understand. And sometimes they kind of miss something. Mukundananda, I regard them to be perfect yogis. So this is yogis, but that doesn't say yogis, it says yogi. All right. Who see the true equality of all living beings and respond to the joys and sorrows of others as if they were their own. So this is the same as Iswaran, and it's the same as Maskaro. Right, so Mukundananda, maybe he was using another translation. He doesn't even have the word Arjuna in here, which is, I think you need to have the word Arjuna if it says Arjuna, right? But that's not a big thing, in a way, because it's all, he's talking to Arjuna. I regard them to be perfect yogis who see the true equality of all living beings and respond to the joys and sorrows of others as if they were their own. It's good, These are all good. I don't want to really put anyone down, because everyone is trying their college best, right? O Arjuna Narasingha, one who regards the happiness and distress of all others equally as if it were their own, is considered the best of yogis. Now, ātma-aupamyena could be that. it could mean that, right? That as if it is your own. And I think that's where people are getting this. So I take back what I said about that maybe they're adding this, because you could read ātma-aupamyena. Let's go back to the verse. ātma-aupamyena sarvatra samam. As if it is one's, in the likeness of one's own self. Everything the same, sees everything the same as if it is one's own self, whether it be pleasant or painful. It's considered the highest yogi. So, it's just how you translate that, ātma-aupamyena. Chinmayananda, O Arjuna, he is the perfect saint. So he says saint, who taught by the likeness within himself, sees the same self everywhere, whether the outer form be pleasurable or painful. Now he is taught by the likeness within himself. I don't know where he's getting that. But we're going to go on. Google Translate. But the fact that he uses saint is weird, right? Because it's like when Prabhupada uses mystic. He doesn't, but how does Prabhupada, this is the one time where Prabhupada says yogi, he doesn't say mystic, right? But oftentimes he translates yogi as mystic, which I think is problematic. But Chinmayananda says saint. That could be that, the yogi could be that as well, that they're a saint, right? Who sees the same self everywhere, right? That is saintly, but it says yogi, right? And this is all about yoga, not necessarily about being a saint. And I don't want to, I know that's semantics, but I don't want to, I think it's like we want to be true to what the words are. To a certain degree. I mean, don't you think? Google Translate has, he who sees everywhere equally by self-likeness, O Arjuna, whether it is happiness or pain, that yogi is considered to be the supreme. He sees everywhere equally by self-likeness, O Arjuna, whether it is happiness or pain. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to understand, right? The meaning is difficult to fathom from that. Finally, we have Edwin Arnold and Charles Wilkins, two of the earlier translations, the English translations. Arjuna, if a man sees everywhere, taught by his own similitude, this is where Chinmayananda might have gotten this, right? Because it's the same thing. Taught by his own similitude, one life, one essence, in the evil and the good, hold him a yogi, well perfected. So it's evil and good, right? It would be Shubha and Ashubha, I think, something like that. But it didn't say. It says Sukha Duḥkha, right? Something about pain and pleasure, right? It doesn't say evil and the good. It doesn't say one life, one essence. You can understand it that way, but that's taking a liberty, with the text. All right, Charles Wilkins, the man, O Arjuna, who from what passeth in his own breast, whether it be pain or pleasure, so this is actually happening to the yogi, that the yogi is feeling pain or pleasure, beholdeth the fame in others, is esteemed the supreme yogi. Now, what does he mean by fame? This is probably an older meaning of the word fame. Oh, sorry, it isn't fame, it's the same, right? Behold, it's the same. Because Because if you read Charles Wilkins, the F's look like an S, so that was my mistake. Beholdeth the same in others. Right, sees, again, the meaning is lost a little bit, right? All right, let's go back to the beginning. These are all going to be in the description, so you can look at them yourself. Arjuna, one who sees the image of one's own self the same everywhere. So, let's read. ātma-aupamyena sarvatra samam paśhyati Arjuna, sukham va yadi va duḥkhaṁ sa yogi paramo mataḥ. Arjuna, one who, sees the image of one's own self, ātma-aupamyena paśhyati, the same everywhere. I'm going to put Arjuna, the same everywhere. Sarvatra sama, whether pleasurable or painful, is regarded as the supreme yogi. Yeah, I think going, literally that's, hey bud, how you doing?
Hi.
All right, I think we're done. Hari Om Tat Sat. Thank you.